Hello friends and fellow world builders, my name is AJ Winters and welcome back to World Builder. Today we're talking capital cities, more specifically diving into the Trilands a little bit further. Last week we talked about the Trilands and how they have reached some sort of trade agreement between the three of them, but what we haven't talked about is the fact that these three cities probably didn't start off that way. Which means they have their own culture, language and reason for being there before they team up together. Today we need to work out why these cities popped up where they did, how they survived, and how that influenced their culture. Let's start with the river city, the one that I'm the most fascinated with. See, most cities emerge in fertile lands and near fresh water sources, which would make sense for the river city, except that it's the most complicated place to build a city. The structures would have had to be between the water, which means they would have needed to implement things like aqueducts and dams in order to control the water for their own purposes. And speaking of those inventions, you would have to assume that the people that move there already have access to that technology. It'd be really difficult to build an entire city over a river without the people, the knowledge, and the experience in how to do that. This is an entirely man-made city that is controlling the elements around it. And that in itself is so exciting to think about. Alrighty, so first off we know that this city needs to be circular. If we're going to stick to the cities all being circular so that they can have magic runes beneath them for teleportation and safety, then that's where we need to start. So I did a little bit of digging into the type of magic rune circles that I'm looking towards and found things like from Full Metal Alchemist, Cardcaptor Sakura, and of course Doctor Strange. But I also had the idea that the civilization that lives in this city have controlled the water through water gates and man-made structures. Is Venice like that? Actually, yes. Their people fled the mainland from barbarian conquerors and made a home for themselves on this flat, muddy and waterlogged island in the middle of a lagoon. To make the islands in the Venetian lagoon fit for habitation, Venice settlers drained the areas of the lagoon and dug up hundreds of canals. They basically put down these waterproof wooden slats and then stone on top of that, and that is what the buildings of Venice are built on. To think that some of those buildings in Venice today are still standing on 1,000-year-old piles of wood, that's astonishing to me. And also deeply inspiring. The gorgeous dome cathedral, the canals, the white-stoned buildings, it's just so poetic. So I think I'm going to start there. I love the idea of having a tiered structure to this city as well, which would mean that we would need the rivers to somehow course upwards, which isn't how nature works, which means magic or technology is involved. I like this image right here. As you can see, the rivers sort of pass from the center of the city. I don't think that's entirely possible because we do have 3 rivers that come into the city, but we can definitely start with that idea. Here's where it comes together. I want to merge the use of the man-made river canals like in Venice and the idea of the rune lines coursing beneath them. I can picture towering white stone structures, water wheels generating power, and flowing turquoise water allowing little canal boats to travel all across the city. The river passages will be called rows, numbered or given names, and in regular cycles water gates will rise to block them off for cleaning or maintenance, allowing the water to remain pristine. If we pull up some of these reference images that I've found on river cities, you can see that they sort of tower upwards. Again though, we need to find a way for the rivers to flow upwards, and that might be pumps or water turbines, the wheels themselves, or a dam structure in which we build and pool the water for our own benefit. I say our like it's my city, but I'm going to put my mind into the mind frame of the citizens that live here. It's starting to look very much like a cult symbol or something really sinister looking. I don't know why, that's where my brain goes. With the rivers outside the runic lines of this city, there would also be a lot of fishing as well as ports. So I think outside of these runic borders that basically signify the safety of the city, there would be little huts of people like fishermen that live there. Okay, I've got a clearer idea of what this city looks like now, and with all these different river passages, I'm getting a really fun visual of these canal boats and tradespeople and fishermen, which I think is the main export of this city, but also the main job and trade. The working class of this river city would be fishermen and craftspeople, the people that make the boats that they fish with. And then we would need some sort of governing body, which I think would be some sort of a council or maybe a mayor. And something that I've been thinking about is, obviously, this is when they're established. This city has been around for a very long time. This is when they now have the trade agreements with the trilands. But what were they like before this? Were they a people that enjoyed fishing before they moved to these rivers? Is that why they moved to the rivers? Or maybe they fell into the trade because that was what was around them. No, I like the idea that they were a people that always liked fishing, or fish, or the sea. Maybe they were pirates. No. I kind of like the idea that they established themselves in the river city for a religious purpose of some kind, maybe a burial site or something left over from the War of the Gods, like a temple. And from that, they built the city around it. So maybe, centuries past, we still have some sort of religious aspect in the river city. I like that, because that adds some other elements to the civilization and the culture of this land. Not only do you have the fishermen that live on the outskirts of the city, but you also have the workings of the inner city, which would be clerics, potentially, people of religious stature, and the wealthy. They would need so many engineers for things like river maintenance and technology. So maybe there's some sort of learned aspect to this city as well, which means we have several elements that we can dive into later. The fishing, the religious aspect, the council and or mayor, as well as some sort of engineering school.
As you arrive in the river city, it's not hard to lose your breath on the wind. You look up to the domed Senate building at the center of the city and watch the rivers and canals that expand from it. The people are friendly, traveling fish upstream to markets or carving wood outside their shops. Most of the buildings are a white stone, sourced from the cliffs where the sea salt has stained its seashell. The air is warm as this city marks the tail end of the more humid region in this land. And the sun shines down on the turquoise water passages as you almost feel the hum of the unknown power that courses beneath this man-made city.
I really like where we're going with this. Having all those different elements in a city means that we can really dive into the culture later down the track. So if anything that we spoke about today really speaks to you, or you have some ideas of what you want to incorporate into this river city, then leave them in the comments below. Next week, we're going to dive into animals and creatures, specifically fauna, of this land and the Trilands. I'm really excited for it, so stay tuned. Until then, join all the socials, hit subscribe, and if you want to be part of our community where we talk world building daily, join our Discord. You can also check out our Patreon, where you could subscribe and get access to behind the scenes content, as well as some special voting powers for things like names of river cities, for example. I am unbelievably excited to continue this journey with you. So, I'll see you next week.